buildings in the tourism zoning through design processes and building heights, and then proposing a variety of housing products. So looking at not only the 450 products, but then closer to the areas of highest amenity around the lake and the tourism side to the east of the residential side, some smaller lot products, maybe semi-detached or attached products at smaller lot sizes, which provide that diversity, but also address affordability. So in terms of planning proposals, there's two tests for planning proposals. One's known as a strategic merit test, and that's for us to demonstrate how the proposal meets state and local planning strategies and plans, policies. And then there's a site-specific merit test. With the strategic merit test, this is showing the Central Coast Regional Plan of 2041. We believe we meet the strategic merit test, and Department of Planning have advised us we meet the strategic merit test. The Central Coast Region Plan divides the region into an urban area and a rural area. We're in the urban area, known as the Narara District, and drilling down from that is the Somersby Regional Significant Growth Area, which talks about tourism, residential land uses, green network of open space and conservation and heritage on the site, which we are proposing to do. And then even further below that is the placemaking outcomes that are specific to this particular site. On the right-hand side, talks about maintaining and expanding tourism uses, which is a key focus of this proposal. Talks about sensitive land uses and talks about residential not impacting on the industrial. And we've worked with council officers around the development footprint, and we think we've addressed that at this point. So touching on project benefits, there's an economic tourism benefit, housing and social and environmental benefits. I've got another slide after this one that will drill down a bit further about the economic benefits. But it is around direct and indirect jobs on the site, and I can explain that a bit further on the next slide. Just before I get to that. The advice to date is saying that there could be 600,000 visitations on the site. Now that's 250 to the Australian Reptile Park, which is existing, with another 350,000 if this proposal was to proceed. And we see that as a major driver for economic growth in the region. Not only people coming to the site, but also visiting elsewhere on the Central Coast, either staying here and spending money elsewhere or visiting across the region. Housing, I talked about the diversity and affordability of housing and the supply that this site could provide. And the social and economic environmental benefits with a local amenity for both visitors to the site, but also for residents on the site who are within walking distance of the tourism component, with some local dining and retail opportunities, increasing the conservation area up to by 32 hectares, so going from 6 to 38 hectares, and a network of walking, cycling corridors throughout the site, and with a conservation component. So in terms of the economic benefits in particular, and given the nature of this committee, so we thought we would provide a little bit more around the economic benefits for the site. The advice to date is that if the site was to proceed, there could be in the order of 1,300 to 1,800 direct jobs on the site in retail, food and beverage, accommodation, arts and recreation on the site. That's a diversity of jobs for residents locally, and particularly young people on the Central Coast. And those jobs that are potentially for the younger cohort, 800 to 1,200 jobs, and that's and you can see there on that table that there is Central Coast has a higher unemployment rate than Greater Sydney and New South Wales, both overall, but also in youth employment. So we think this proposal could provide that much needed employment opportunities on the site. And that tourism expenditure in the local economy with overnight stays, multi-day experiences, food and beverage offering, we think there's real benefit, economic benefit from this proposal. So that's strategic merit. In terms of site-specific merit, we've covered off, the normal process is to look at site constraints and then look at the opportunities that the site presents. And site-specific merit is about demonstrating that the site can develop under the proposed zonings and land uses. So we've identified all those. I won't go through all that detail, but You can see that there's a fairly detailed amount of work that's gone into identifying the development footprint on the site and to identify those. There's some overhead power line easements through the site. That's a grey corridors. Those pink circles on the bottom left and in the top, sort of noise buffer zones, and we've worked around that with council. The green area is a conservation area, and the yellow area is a buffer around that. And there's the blue lines are Leask Creek, which runs north-south through the site into the man-made dam, and there's a tributary or overland flow path, sort of east-west direction in that light blue colour, and identifies a heritage item on the site. So that's in the constraints mapping. The opportunities is those walking and cycling connections that through the national park or through throughout the site. That's really a driver for both the residential and tourism connecting together. There's a list of consultant reports. I'm not going to go through all those, but there's just showing that there is a fair amount of work that's been undertaken, and Alex mentioned the commitment that he's and expenditure he's delivered on the site, and it's really a lot of this work is driven by all these consultant reports and those constraints and opportunities that have shown on the previous map. Alex talked about the timeline that's to date. 2018 is when the site was purchased, 2020 when the planning proposal was lodged. We had a pre-gateway meeting with the Department of Planning and other agencies in 2023. And during that time, there's been various iterations and requests for further work, amendments to plans. The residential has been moving around a bit. The plan that we submitted to date is direct response to what we were asked to do, to investigate some higher density closer to the tourism side of things and graduating the density away, which is a sensible planning approach. And now we're in 2025 and we really want to see that the planning proposal progress. The next step in the process is to send it to the Department of Planning for a gateway determination. It's certainly not the end of the process, it's certainly the start of the assessment. So there's ongoing conversations with council officers and Department of Planning and other state agencies, and then it goes to exhibition, of course, with community consultation. But we want to get that conversation going, and that can only occur through a progression to a gateway determination. To get there, there's probably three, of all the issues we've been dealing with over the years, there's probably three issues that remain outstanding, I guess. One is around strategic merit, where council officers have said that they're not quite convinced that we're satisfied the Central Coast Regional Plan, yet the Department of Planning say we are satisfying the regional plan, and we sort of sit in the middle of that. And that's a conversation we probably need to have with officers and the department to resolve that. Transport for New South Wales has raised some concerns around the capacity of the road network. As of Thursday last week, we received an updated traffic report from our consultants who've been working with Transport for New South Wales. So Transport's provided a whole lot of data to our GHD, did the traffic modelling for us, set up the methodology and the assumptions for GHD to do all their work. What that found was that the results came in and said there was a few intersections based on background growth. That's growth not including this site, but growth elsewhere in Summersby and others that require upgrades. But those upgrades are quite minor, and I'll come to the next slide in a minute to show what that looks like. But there's certainly some capacity in particular for the start of the tourism to commence under the current constraints in the road network. And in terms of biodiversity, I don't think it's a significant issue in terms of what we've been dealing with council officers. We think we're almost there in terms of we're discussing around some boundaries of the conservation, but I think I'm confident we can resolve those matters. So if I can expand, next slide, please. Sorry. If I can expand on the traffic advice. So this is the draft advice we received, as I said, last week. And what it showed, there was two intersections that require upgrades. So the Wisens Ferry Road and Old Pacific Highway, and then Wisens Ferry Road Pacific Motorway off-ramp. So in terms of background growth, not including our proposal, the Wisens Ferry Road, Old Pacific Highway intersection, the roundabout there, in 2042, and the PM peak would operate a level of service F, which is the worst case in terms of traffic modelling. They usually go from A down to F. F means a failure of the intersection. And then the Wisens Ferry Road and Pacific Motorway off-ramp, where there's a stop sign controlling that intersection in 2032 in the AM peak in the mornings, and then 2042 in the PM peak is when it hits a level of service F. But the resolution to that, with including background growth and our proposal and upgrades to those intersections, the Wisens Ferry Road Old Pacific Highway intersection roundabout, suggesting an additional lane on the approach to the roundabout from the north, on the northern side of that roundabout, going through the roundabout, would result in a level of service A, which is the highest level of traffic modelling at an intersection. And similarly, at the off-ramp to the Pacific Motorway, changing that from a stop sign to a signalised intersection would move it from a level service A to a level of service F. They're quite minor in the context of traffic improvements, and that's something we need to discuss with Transport for New South Wales. Like I said, we only got this on Thursday last week, so we need to have this conversation with Council and Council's traffic people and Transport. And so lastly, I'll just touch on the development application that we're seeking to lodge. So the intention of the development application is, whilst this planning proposal has been in the system for a long period of time, we want to get on and start developing some of the tourism components. And so the current LEP does allow for certain land uses, and the landowners and clients want to develop a restaurant and visitor information centre on the site in the bottom corner there in that orange colour I've circled. And that's just to show that there is commitment. We want to get on and do a high quality design. To address some demand for a restaurant, and the visitor centre is really to showcase Central Coast attractions and leave that open to the visitors who want to come to the site with future stages as the planning proposal progresses. And these are some of the visuals around the DA yet to be lodged. We're looking at lodging that very soon. We've had a couple of pre-DA meetings with council officers. We're talking about a 120 indoor seat restaurant with 70, 80 outdoor seats, a 200 square metre display and visitor information centre, and tourist arts and craft shop as part of that as the first stage of development. And these are just some schematics on both sides of the image, and the images in the middle are just some precedent examples that's been modelled to show what that could look like. With the last slide, just is the next one. It's just another image showing what that. So on the right-hand side is the intended restaurant overlooking the lake. The visitor information centre is at the back of that, and the white buildings are the existing former old Sydney Town buildings on the site, which will be repurposed for use as part of the precinct. And there's some other buildings behind that which will come out as further later stages. So that's the end of the presentation, and happy to take any questions if anyone has any questions.
I'm clear about your proposal for the DA you're about to lodge, that it will be a restaurant and an tourist information centre, but what are the longer term aims in terms of tourism facilities for the site?
Do you want to talk to that, Roy? Well, the intent, you might want to talk to that. The next few stages are really dependent on the outcome of the planning proposal. So we're restricted by the list of permissible uses in the LEP. The planning proposal with the SP3 zoning would broaden a range of tourist uses, and then we're proposing to add some more. So if that got up, then they could propose a whole range of different tourist uses. It's uncertain. The actual uses themselves are not yet confirmed. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. So I can't be definitive about, say, the next stages because it's not.
Oh no, I understand that you're reliant on the rezoning, but I thought you might have something in mind that you were thinking about.
It's really clear for our stage one, we talk restaurant and information center, and also potentially we have some of the concept idea for stage two and stage three, including on Xinjiang. For example, stage two we have the art village, and also have the hotel competition, and how have the museum and the gallery and the data market as well. So that is in very high level concept stage. So that's why it's lots of uncertainties, not only from planning proposal and also from the strategy design point of view, and who will invest and join us to develop this site. So in the future, so at the moment, I don't think we are able to provide very clear master plan because we haven't got any certainty regarding the planning for this site. That's why we submit a planning proposal and try to get some certainty from the planning point of view for the zoning. Then we are able to do the detailed master plan for the whole tourism and residential proceeds as well.
Yeah, right. Thanks for your presentation. My concerns lie with the Australian Reptile Park, and I understand you guys are their landlords. In those proposals, I didn't see anything to protect the Australian Reptile Park. I noticed on page 15 there was potential access to the development through the Reptile Park. So I suppose my questions are, do you have any plans long term to ensure their sustainability to stay where they are? And also are you working with them to help them in their business operations? And also the third part is the parking issues up there. What do you estimate visitor access there once all the development is done, if it's passed, in comparative to the 250,000 per annum at the Reptile Park to address the parking issues up the top?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And currently, we're working with Reptile Park to consider is the intention of the Reptile Park. We can probably just leasing more land to the Reptile Park, and also regarding the car spacing, and potentially will provide the 10,000 to 15,000 square meters actual land to Reptile Park for the extension the car parking. Regarding access for future development, we have the multi-access for the site. If I have looked the 1P talking about site, the permit, and we have the multi, I think, page number, yeah, I think it's slide 9. Page 9, slide 9. That's okay.
Could you bring up slide 9, please? Yeah.
Yeah, page 9.
Just so it shows the reptile park. That one? Is that the one?
Yeah, I think.
The intention is for the access to the north. It's not. It's through the back of the. It's the existing access around the reptile park. That's the northern side. So it's that existing line that was accessed through the former old Sydney town.
Yeah, if you go to the would you mind to go to the page number 4, please? I think that's one.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Page
right.
number.
Yep. Next one.
Next one.
Next one. Sorry. Other direction. Sorry. That one.
That one.
Yes.
Yeah, you have this is one. They have the potential of the road and access for the whole site, and the ones for the Pole Street, Pale Road, and for the eastern to western, and the couple road is from the on the top of the north have the 2 car park location. One is close to the Reptile Park. That car park will be provided to the Reptile Park for the future car parking space. And the next one is car park will be close to the Pale Road. So that will be the second major exercise for the whole site, for tourism site. And also, if you go to the, I think the bottom and up to the green, the compensation area, we have the main road and from the old person highway and Pale Road to our side as well. That's
So, are you currently working with them to ensure? I guess I'm speaking on a community perspective where it's such a big part of our culture here on the Central Coast in Australia. They need to be protected. As a landlord, I think it'll be appropriate to add some measures in there somewhere to ensure certainty on a certain level that that they have long-term sustainability in that area.
Yeah, totally answered for that. I think we have very good relationship with Reptile Park, and we discussed a couple of times regarding extension of the land used and also the future car park space. Even I think the last month we speak to the owner, the director, the team, and the leads talking about what's the future land use for the extension the area on the south of the park. See the yellow on the western side, the yellow part in the west side of the Reptile Park. That's a potential the future extension area for the Reptile Park. And also we mentioned about that's car space on the eastern side. That would be the future for reptile the car space. So we're working on that. At the moment, honestly, we just try to do some site tidy up and for the location of the potential car space. And hopefully we can tidy up and we can have settle engage with Reptile Park and provide actual car space for them. So, by the way, I have some letters from Reptile Park, and they really support our future development for our planning proposal. It's here. If you need, I can provide that letter to you. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to come back to the question about the tourism aspect. So at this stage, you're just talking about a visitor centre and a restaurant, is that correct? So is that, I think you spoke at the beginning of estimated 600,000 visitation and 250 of that is the reptile park. So is it the restaurant and the visitor centre that you're expecting 350,000 visitation per year?
No, the 600,000 is with full development. So if the full tourism component was fully developed with the Australian Reptile Park, it would be 600,000 visitations.
And so what is the full tourism component? What is the tourism product, I guess?
So the first stage is the restaurant and visitor centre, but the second and third stages aren't fully confirmed, the detail, but it's everything east of the dam that on the eastern side of that map. If that was fully developed out as a full tourism precinct, the specifics, the advice was that whether it's a markets or whether it's an arts and crafts store, it doesn't really impact on the type of visitations. The visitations will still be the same. So the specific details around the individual tourism land use doesn't really affect the visitation numbers. That was the advice we were provided. But the advice was there'd be an additional 350,000 visitations on the site.
Okay. And so the intention is to proceed with the tourism component through a DA. Is that irrespective of whether the bigger planning proposal is approved, or is it conditional on the bigger planning proposal being supported?
Well, the first stage is permissible under the LEP. If the planning proposal wasn't supported, you'd only be constrained by what the LEP allows for. So whether there's additional restaurants on the site or there's limitations with the uses in the LEP at the moment.
So nothing would happen unless the LEP was supported?
Well, is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick question about the visitor centre. Who's going to operate that? Is that responsibility of council, or is that something that you sell to operate?
I think we will operate by ourselves, and but we will have the one section, particular section for the Central Coast. We will ask the contribution and we give to the council. For one section, introduce all the Central Coast tourism sectors, but we will manage by ourselves.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question to the appropriate director. What does council think about a third-party operator having a visitor information centre in our region?
I guess we need to understand exactly how that's going to work. From what I can understand from the presentation, it was really around not necessarily visitor information for the entire region, but more to that site. So it's related to this this particular development. So that would be appropriate. I would suggest.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from the speakers? Councillor Neil.
Yes, I just wanted to go back to. I'm sorry to take you back to the same question, but I'm just not want to make sure that we're communicating clearly. If your DA is approved, would you proceed with that while you waited for the LEP to be approved, or would you wait for the LEP to be resolved one way or the other before you proceed with the DA?
We build a restaurant.
Honestly, it's I think in the presentation we're talking about what's the region we start to the state what we call DA for restaurant. Because of we just can't wait get the support from council because it's sitting in council for a long time. So that's why we really want to invest for this site. Start to invest. That's why we use the county zoning, that is C4, to submit the stage 1 DA.
So what I'm trying to work out is whether you're going to proceed with what's contained in the DA while you wait for the LEP to be approved or otherwise.
Yeah, I think the reason is county C4. We try to rezone it for SP3. They give us a more opportunity and flexibility for development tourism proceed. That's one of the big reasons.
I think the intention is to build the restaurant. That straight up, because
Okay.
you can do that now. The visitor centre.
We can do that.
You can do that now, but it's obviously dependent on showcasing the rest of the tourism component.
Which has to exist for you to
So
showcase it.
the restaurant definitely. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, in terms of, there's obviously concern in the community about some of the biodiversity in the area, and you've identified that in your presentation. What studies have you undertaken to determine what those issues are in the area of land that you're dealing with under the LEP?
There's been a fairly detailed study by ELA, Ecological Australia, and working with council officers through that process. So they've identified the most significant parts of the site, which is proposed to be in the conservation zone. That's another 32 hectares of conservation, which doesn't exist at the moment. So that's the preservation of those trees around the western boundary of the site, backing onto the national park.
So that's sort of behind that green bit right at the top.
The green wrapping around and down the bottom as well. So it's pretty much surrounded by conservation along the west and the northern part, and then down the southern part of the site. And the conversation, as I mentioned in the presentation, there's some key issues. It's really around Lease Creek, which runs through the middle of the site, and the width of that creek corridor, and how we preserve some of that riparian corridor through that centre part of the site.
Is that the green line that's shown on the map?
Yeah, it's a green. That's right, from the Australian Reptile Park down to the blue dam, the man-made dam, and it wraps around the dam. And we're just trying to get connectivity through the site, and how best we achieve that. That's the conversation at the moment. We think we're there. We're working around the edges around that.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to come back to you again. Just two questions, and I've forgotten one of them. But one of them was, I know there's been some commentary about concerns about the strategic merit of the site, and you indicated that Department of Planning has indicated there is strategic merit. Is that in writing, or is that a verbal conversation?
There's a couple of times. So first time was back in 2022, when the former region plan, the 2036 region plan. So there was a meeting, and they provided their own minutes of that meeting, and they stated in there that residential west of the M1 is not prohibited, and that could proceed. And then we had.
Sorry, they said it could proceed, or they said it was not prohibited.
Not prohibited west of the M1.
Right. Thank you.
And then the pre-gateway meeting, following that, we had a meeting with the Department of Planning, and they asked us to come back with some further information about the site, about strategic merit. And then they said they were satisfied that we had met strategic merit, we had met the 15-minute neighbourhood principle in the region plan, and that's minuted. We prepared minutes, and we sent that to Council and Department of Planning, and no one came back and told us it was incorrect. And that was the advice from the Director at Department of Planning.
But you don't have correspondence from Department of Planning saying that. Okay, thank you. And I remember my other question. In your surveys, the Summersby Industrial Estate, which is relatively close by, has significant Aboriginal as well as environmental threatened species issues, I guess. So how does that compare for your site, especially in terms of the Aboriginal sites? Thank you.
The Aboriginal sites down on the southern part of the site. There's a little image showing the rock carving, I think it is, on the site, which is going to be preserved as a conservation area. So that's been identified as part of one of the studies. So all that investigation has been undertaken. There's been an archaeological Indigenous heritage report prepared, and as well as the biodiversity report that's been prepared on the site has identified those boundaries as to where the significant conservation areas are.
Was that the same company that did the environmental surveys, or was it?
No, it's different.
So who did the Aboriginal work?
We might want to just move to the slide if that's okay. There's a slide that lists. If you just scroll through, it's near site-specific merit. Next one. There. So Ecological Australia did the first ecological report, and then the Indigenous Heritage report. I can't read that. My eyesight's not the best. Yeah, Heritage Now was the consultants at the top. So just the top line there. Yeah.
Any further questions? No? Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Do you have a mover for the motion? Or Councillor Hayes?
Questions of the staff, or are we going to hear from the staff? I don't mind, I can ask a few questions.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, questions, sure.
So I'm looking at the aerial photo from Google, I suppose, and there's actually quite a lot of the site that is currently cleared, including what appears to be now suggested to be conservation. So am I looking at that right, that effectively there's probably a gain of conservation land?
You're referring to the
Google Earth.
Oh, you're on Google Earth, not in the report.
Well, the report and Google Earth do seem to be all but identical.
Yeah. So it does appear that a portion of the site is somewhat cleared. Yes.
And under the current zoning, you could put caravan parks on that, subject obviously to getting approval still with issues like servicing and stuff like that. But it could be developed under the LEP for caravan parks, couldn't it?
Potentially, yes, if that's permissible under the SP3 zoning.
Well, the report does say it is permissible.
Yeah.
And while I understand the report is a town planning report, this is the Economic Development Committee. And I would have thought there was some sort of, if you like, economic impact report to go through it, because I think the reason, although I'm guessing the reason it's come to the committee is because of its potential economic effect that is completely absent from the staff report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take that feedback on board. I guess there's some clarity around the request for the purpose of the report being requested, understanding that is the Economic Development Committee, but it was we're of the view that what was thought was an update on the planning proposal and the DA. So that was the contents of why the report was structured that way, but certainly take that feedback on board.
Because, I mean, from my experience, and I'm not a tourist operator, but it appears that significant tourist developments these days need some sort of anchor, and typically that is residential. So if you look at the recent golf course developments, they all have villa housing or some sort of housing around them, because the golf course can't be sustained without some sort of basically, other anchor to it. And so I suppose I'm going to make that more of a comment in the sense of that's why I would have thought there was some of that needed to go into the report. And look, to be fair, I mean, this is the first time you've actually had a report like this to this committee, and so it's a learning curve, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, as I said, I take that on board. I guess where this proposal is at was at a point where we really haven't landed on something that everybody's comfortable with at this point in time. So it's hard to provide any additional commentary other than the issues that we see before us in terms of the planning proposal.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask a question of the staff? Who's the consent authority on this matter, if I could ask? I mean, it won't come to a council meeting other than the planning proposal for endorsement. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are you talking about the planning proposal?
I'm talking about either or, the DA and or the planning proposal.
The planning proposal will come to council for the gateway, for approval to go to the gateway, to get a gateway determination, I should say. And then it'll be the Department of Planning that will determine that. The DA, we would expect either the local planning panel or potentially the regional planning panel, depending on the size and the value of the.
Sorry, the DA could go to the regional planning panel.
It could, depending on the value. Yeah. So
Okay.
we don't have
Thank
a DA. We've had a pre-DA at this stage, so it just depends.
Thank you.
No further questions. Can I have a mover, please? For motion.
That. You raised the issue, Councillor Eaton, but you didn't actually ask for an economic impact report. Are you proposing to add that to the recommendation? Oh, okay. Well, I think if we're going to make decisions about it, I would certainly find that interesting. So can we add to the recommendation that in due course a economic impact report be provided on this proposal?
Three, Mr. Mayor. So do you want? I'm just looking at the recommendation, which is really just to, I believe, note.
Noted.
Yeah, where we're at. I'm thinking that there's a process to go through still with this.
Oh no, I do understand that. I don't expect that we will receive it tomorrow.
Okay.
But I think in due course, an economic impact statement about the SEP and the entire project would be worthwhile.
Would you? So just for clarity, would you envision that as part of the report to council on if it does get to the point of seeking a gateway determination? Would you want it with then, or would you like it before that?
I would hope to have it beforehand.
Okay.
But if there's practical difficulties with that, you can certainly bring them back to us.
Sure, we can look at what that timing looks like, but report it back to this committee.
Thank you, Director.
Thanks, Councillor Neil. Can I have a move on? Councillor Mullen, thank you. Councillor Neil seconded. Yep. Okay. All those in favour? So, Councillor Mullen, Councillor McKenna, Councillor Neil, Councillor Smith, you putting your hand up? Oh, sorry. Councillor McWade, unanimous. Next item on the agenda is 1.5.
Mr. Mayor, sorry to interrupt, but maybe the speakers could be advised they could leave now.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Ian. See you later. Economic Development Strategy Action Update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Smith, yeah, Councillor Smith. You could be a Councillor Smith.
I got
Director
called Councillor
Smith.
Smith at the last committee meeting. My presentation person has just left the table for a moment. Next slide, thank you. So just by way of background, when the strategy was developed, the COVID-19 pandemic occurred and Council worked with internal and external regional stakeholders to respond to the developing situation, formulating a COVID resilience and recovery framework to sit alongside the strategy. A plan was created to prioritise the implementation of actions identified in the strategy to best support businesses and the community during that time. The COVID Resilience and Recovery Framework had a goal to keep businesses active, support jobs, foster human capital growth, increase community outreach and drive collaboration and innovation. Next slide, please. So these are some of the highlights from the strategy from 2019 through to 2021, which were during the COVID pandemic period. Next slide, please. Highlights from the 22 through to 25 from the Economic Development Strategy. The task force was assembled during the COVID 2020 and was a collaboration of 7 agencies. The task force continues to meet on a fortnightly basis now with 18 regional agencies. In January 2023, the Greater Cities Commission released the Central Coast Strategy for Economic Growth, which identified 7 priorities to grow jobs, industry, connectivity and opportunities for the community. Council was closely involved in the consultation and input into the strategy. The Greater Cities Commission was dissolved 12 months later as of the 1st of January 2024, which made that strategy redundant. So some of the actions that are underway. Can we go back one slide? Forward one? Thank you. Some of the actions that are currently underway for 2025 out of the economic strategy are the Central Coast Blueprint, Transport for New South Wales, Employment and Land Strategy, Central Coast Council, Commercial Land Strategy Council, Industry into Schools Project, Central Coast Council, the Visitor Accommodation Development Action Plan, Central Coast Council, the Business Concierge Program, Central Coast Council, and the new Destination Management Plan, which will be developed later this year. Next slide, please. So the strategies hasn't been reviewed or updated since 2020. The economic landscape has significantly changed following the COVID pandemic. This presents an opportunity to refresh the existing strategy and develop a new implementation plan. A detailed implementation plan is then proposed to be developed in consultation with key stakeholders following the endorsement by Council of a refreshed strategy. The plan will function as a program of work to deliver on the objectives of the strategy. The plan will be designed as a live and agile document to allow projects and programs to be altered to suit the changing environments. This plan will be supported with a quarterly report card on the metrics of key economic development indicators and a half-yearly progress report on actions. The development of a refreshed economic development strategy would be undertaken in-house using the resources of the economic development section. So as you can see from those options up there, option number 1 is the preferred option, which is to refresh the existing strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor McWade.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the relevant director. Can you just go into further detail of the Business Concierge Program and just explain it a bit better? And also, why the 4-year focus? Is it to match this term with the councillors, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. The 4-year term is probably around the average time frame that you would develop a strategy before you actually renew it and refresh it. The aim, of course, would be to tie it in with the term of council, naturally, but so that's the thinking around a 4-year term. Sorry, and the first part of your question was the business concierge model. Yeah, I might refer that to the unit manager, Sue, to respond to.
The Business Concierge program is one that we want to have a look at. So currently for most people who are looking to do business here on the Central Coast, there's avenues through Services New South Wales, and then there's a referral process from Services New South Wales back to council. And there's lots of processes that happen within council that actually aren't really, I suppose, as streamlined as they could be. So what we would like to do is do a full process review for that. Also undertake a customer journey mapping process for that as well, to understand the customer's journey through that in terms of how those referrals go back and forth between other levels of government and council. Because purely for customers, it's a bit messy, and I think it's an opportunity for council to streamline its current processes and improve that, and also improve the information that we provide back to people that are interested in doing business on the Central Coast, the avenues that they can go through, what are the constraints and challenges, and providing really clear information for them on how to do that.
So just to round that one out, just to add to what Sue said. So it's about being able to, for new businesses that want to establish on the Central Coast, being able to streamline the process. At the moment, it's really clunky for them. They sort of get passed around from pillar to post. The concierge model, the aim of that would be that they have one point of contact. So everything else happens in the back end, and they have one point of contact.
Councillor Milland.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in regards to the concierge, look, most businesses just want someone to hold their hand through the process, and I think it's really important. But hopefully we're actually talking to those big businesses about what they really want instead of what council would like to see. So I think that's really important. Can we go back to the three options? I want to discuss the differences between option 1 and option 3, and it's probably a question to the director. How much relevance is in that old document? The community doesn't like. Many people in the community don't like that old document. They believe it should be a lot more targeted. There should be some real good actions in there. So, what percentage of that document is still current, still relevant to our community 5 years later? And would it be better to go straight to option 3 and develop a brand new strategy from scratch, where these councillors in this chamber can actually own and help deliver?
Bear with me just for one moment. I'll just go back to the options. So in terms of the existing document, we're sort of still working our way through that and looking to determine what are the elements out of that are contemporary and that we can lift out and move forward. To start from scratch is a huge task, and we do believe that there are some elements in the existing strategy that can be pulled forward and can be refined more so that there is more specific outputs and outcomes. At the moment, there's a lot of statements and a lot of high-level motherhood statements. What we want to do is refine that or distill that down so that there's actually outputs and outcomes and deliverables. So we would endeavour to have a scorecard, and we would report against that quarterly and half yearly in terms of progress against those outcomes, outputs, and make it more of a usable document rather than high-level statements.
Would it be possible now to look at a hybrid model where we look at the old document, put a line through everything that's either been finished or is irrelevant, and then use a hybrid number 3 to actually look at where we are now, where we want to be in 4, 10, 15 years' time. And that way we get a document that's fit for the future and something our community can own today.
That's achievable. That is achievable. I think one of the issues with the existing document is it had such a long lifespan. So it was developed in 2019, the draft was developed, to 2040. So one of the things where we sort of landed around the 4-year mark was that the business and economic environment changes so quickly and so rapidly that we need to be agile and fluent within that. So I guess my concern around having it too much longer is that you may not have enough flex in the document. if that makes sense.
I'd just like to build out community confidence in this document, and if there's an opportunity to either start from scratch or put a different face on it and some real good key actions, I think that would build some real confidence, not only in our community but investors as well. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Millen. Councillor McQuaid.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Millen's point, it's things, the economy and the landscape changes rapidly. With my own experience, we need to be on top of it and link this somehow with the upgraded DA event strategies that are coming up as well somehow to allow business easeability. And we really need to focus on getting rid of the motherhood statements and having real actions. And is this something that us councillors have input in moving forward?
So through the Mayor, yes, absolutely. So to your first point about the DA and the major events, we've already started those conversations at the back end to try and sort of get some more streamlined processes in that area. So they would be one of the tasks that we would put into a strategy like this. In regards to the committee being involved, absolutely. So it would be the first sort of skim of going through or read of the existing strategy, pulling that apart and coming back with a first draft, if you like, of what we think the elements are in the existing strategy that might be able to be pulled through to a new strategy, and then having a conversation around what else needs to go into the document to make it of value to the community. There's no point having motherhood statements or high-level statements if there's nothing that the community can actually, I guess, if you like, mark council against.
Just further to that, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we, a new chamber, we need to change the culture to allow businesses to attract new business and entrepreneurs and whatnot to make it easy for them to do business with us. So, change the culture, let it be known that we are open for business and we want to work with you. And I see this document, to Councillor Millen's point, as a big lever in changing that aspect of it. Is there a time frame?
I would probably suggest that from start to finish the process will take around 12 months, because it will mean reviewing the existing document in depth, bringing back drafts to the committee to work through for input, and then going through a council cycle.
Councillor Neil's got the gig.
On behalf of Councillor Smith, this is not what I was saying. I'm going to be speaking after this for myself. Councillor Smith asked whether there would be a community consultation phase in that process.
Hence the length of time, because it would need to go through multiple stakeholders with multiple rounds of community engagement. The task force, for example, would be heavily involved in the process as well as the broader business community.
Thank you. In terms of the strategy, I think really in terms of determining whether it's a review or a complete refresh is really not of great consequences. If you actually look at the elements contained in the plan, much of what's there are still issues. The airport, Kibble Park, the waterfront, attracting business, buy local, they're all still issues that are relevant. I think in my perspective, the dissatisfaction in the community with the plan is not what's contained in it in terms of its end objectives, is that we haven't actually put a plan in place that brings those about. And a lot of those issues really haven't had any work done on them for quite some time. I might suggest that the Gosford waterfront is a prime example where the community is underwhelmed by lack of progress. So I think we certainly do need a very big revamp of the plan. It is disappointing it takes 12 months, but it's true. To have sufficient consultation, we do need to do it at a reasonable pace, not rush in helter-skelter. But I certainly would strongly support a revamp of the plan. But of course, if we can do it as quickly as possible, that would be great.
Just in response to your statement, then, Councillor, agreed, and that was my point earlier about having tangible outputs and outcomes. We don't have those currently, so I can understand the dissatisfaction from the community, and I can understand them needing more surety from us, hence why we want to go back to quite a basic model where you actually do have outcomes and outputs. So timelines against projects. So when will they see something delivered against that project, for example, and what will that look like?
Now, I did note your comments earlier, Director. I suppose I just felt the need to emphasise them.
Councillor Eaton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the appropriate director. I suppose first an observation, I couldn't find anything that I could see that was achieved from this strategy. Now that's being a bit harsh maybe, but the things that are said, completed or achieved seem to be done by other agencies, not by anyone at council. But in terms of, it's clearly got to have concrete outcomes, and it's got to be things like jobs. Yes, but did we do that? I don't think so. Yeah, exactly. There was hardly anything, I think, anyhow. But things like jobs, investment dollars, areas of factories per square metre, those sort of things that are measurable and concrete. Because what's the point of having a strategy? Even if it's an action, the action is to make a strategy. Strategy doesn't give anything like any of those things. It's got to be very basic measurables. You can have other stuff too, but at the end of the day, what it's designed to achieve is basically better lives for the Central Coast citizens, and that's measured in things like jobs, income, unemployment rates, and that then translates back to things like square metres of factories and dollars on development to some extent. Thank you.
Councillor Milland.
At the first meeting, I asked the question to the director about how many people in her team that's responsible for economic development. I think the answer was 2. To Councillor Neal's point and to Councillor Eaton's point, in regards to resourcing and time, 12 months is a long time, especially when our community's been waiting for years. In addition, I suppose the bigger concern that I have is in 12 months' time we adopt a new plan with 40 actions, 50 actions. Do we have the resources internally to be able to deliver on those actions?
The answer to that is it depends on the actions that come out of the refreshed strategy. And it depends on how aspirational that strategy looks like. I think there's ways of developing a strategy to make them meaningful and to make them us to be able to fulfil our obligations or our commitments within the context of what we design in a strategy. So it would be looking at how do we partner with other agencies, how do we, rather than being the deliverer of everything, what are some of the levers that we have control over, and we can partner with those other agencies to see deliverables and outcomes for the community. To answer your question, I think we can do it within the resources that we have at the moment.
Just as an example, the presentation we had earlier about Old Sydney Town site, I don't know if our council has even agreed we want a tourism development up at Somersby, Mount Penang, and that should be coming from council. we should be saying we want an event park. We want big tourism ventures up at Carryong and Somersby. What are we going to do potentially with the Ourimbah University site if to Councillor Neill's point, a lot of that's now moving into the Gosford CBD. There's a massive opportunity from an economic development perspective. Who's going to drive that within council? Because that takes time, takes a lot of effort. And I think the community is looking for leadership from council in regards to this economic development plan. So I'd be very concerned as a councillor going out there with a new plan. And the question in the media is, how are we going to deliver it? So I think as we go through this process, I think it's really important we identify resources and partners, to your point, because I think they'll look at that plan and they'll think there's no plan that's going to sit on the shelf and there'll be no confidence.
Wales presently wants to purchase the old council site in Man Street, Gosford, but they don't have the resources at this time to be able to do that, even though they've exchanged contracts with the council, which is an interesting situation. But TAFE also owns much of the land out at the Ourimbah campus. I think we probably can get a bit more innovative with these sorts of things. We obviously, as a community, would like to see TAFE have a new site in Man Street, Gosford. But if they're not utilising the property out at Ourimbah, there may be an option to do some sort of exchange where we put something at the Ourimbah campus which is both educational and grows the economy. And maybe we have to start thinking laterally with some of those issues to sort of be not necessarily putting in all the resources, but being a provider of solutions for problems. It means that we can have greater facilities for our community, but also greater jobs.
Councillor McQuaid.
Just to echo Councillor Mullen's point about the staffing resourcing issues, I noticed there's does not have any financial implications as the review was undertaken by staff. Obviously, we need more staff and resources to help with something like this. Does that, if that's possible to grow that team, for lack of a better term, is that going to have implications with those considerations? And second point, with the recommendations, number 2, I'm not quite comfortable with option 1. And something for more experienced councillors in the room, is there better wording that we can use to go with option 3 as well, like a hybrid model, to not fully develop a completely new strategy, but to have a hybrid model to make it easier on staff? Is there correct wording that we could use?
I'm really concerned about going out there with the word refreshed. I think our community would think that's a bit of a joke, and I don't mind if we change the words, but I think refreshed, people will believe that we're just going to get a revamped version of what we already have, instead of something really contemporary that will deliver real results. So if we can work in that wording, I think that'd be a very good idea.
Updated, reviewed.
I think update is simple, isn't it?
Just give us.
A nice simple one, thank you, Mr. Loader. It would be maybe just to update the economic development strategy.
If the director's happy, could we use review and update?
Sorry?
Review and update. And that may be that hybrid model that was suggested earlier. So.
Happy with that.
Councillor McQuaid, are you happy with review and update? Councillor Neal.
Surely we can have a new plan
So
with aspects of the old plan.
I think we're heading that way, aren't we, in the
Well, we need to
conversation?
make it worded
So
correctly.
we could say something like evaluate the outcomes of the existing strategy and development of a new economic development strategy. So in other words, we're doing new strategy.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
I'm happy. Well done, you lot. Happy with that? Yep. Belinda? Yep.
So to evaluate the existing economic development strategy and develop a new economic development strategy.
Yep. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Moreland. Second of Councillor McQuaid. All those in favour? Councillor McKenna, Councillor Moreland, Councillor Neal, Councillor McQuaid. Carried. Does anyone have any general business? I've got from Councillor John McNamara. Can we add the Central Coast Air Show to the March Economic Development Committee agenda to discuss?
Yes, we can provide a report to the next committee meeting. That's not a problem. Yep.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Milland?
Mr. Mayor, just on that item, I believe the air show would like the opportunity to present in that meeting to talk about what they've got planned for 2026. They're evaluating venues at the moment, and I think they're trying to gauge council's interest in that 2026 event and what the potential DA process may be.
I would also be very pleased to have an updated report on the Waratah Super Battery. I know it's not strictly a council project, but it would be possible to obtain further information from the state government about where we are with that project.
Yeah, we can do that one regarding air show one. We might need to come back to you on that. Yeah, with the report, because I think there's some other issues.
Yeah.
Councillor Neal?
Oh, just that it may be worthwhile in relation to the Waratah Super Battery project to actually have the proponents of the project appear if that's possible. I just think it's an amazing sounding project, and I've not heard anything about it until this strategy.
As long as the wording, if possible, is in there, then that's fine.
If possible. I'm happy to incorporate that.
Yeah.
So either just a report, and if possible, the proponents to attend and address us.
Yeah.
All right. Councillor Smith? Belinda,
What item would you like?
Councillor Neal, put your light off.
I'd be interested in getting an update on the Food Innovation Hub and how that's going and what that's delivering for the coast, if that's of interest to the committee, and where it's going in the future. I think that's a great opportunity Well, actually, I don't know because I haven't heard much about it for a couple of years, but I'd like to. Yeah, yeah.
We can provide you with an update on.
That's Frank. Frank's on. Frank. Yep. Councillor Milland.
Mr. Mayor, at the recent councillor workshop, I think we agreed that we would ask Hunter Central Coast Development Corporation to present the council on the Gosford Waterfront project. So if we can extend an invitation to the next meeting, I think most councillors would be very grateful.
I think there's some issues behind the scene at the moment that will not be possible just at the moment, but I think we'll take that on notice.
Can councillors get some more information in regards to that matter? Because I believe the council is a partner in the project and it is in our region, so it'd be nice to get an update, even if it's a confidential update.
We can certainly come back to you with an update once we get an update. Sorry?
Sorry, who's providing the update to you? Is it state government or is it the Development Corp or is it?
It will be the HCCDC.
Okay, thank you.
No other general business, so we'll close the meeting at 6:25. Thank you.